Hello, everyone, and welcome to Firstpost America. I'm Eric Ham, and we're live in the nation's capital of Washington, D.C. And today we take you from the United States and around the world, covering all the top stories of the day. But before that, here's a look at the latest headlines. Russia says its air defenses destroyed or intercepted over 100 UAVs heading for Moscow as Ukrainian President Zelensky pushes for a summit with President Trump and Putin to end the more than 3 years conflict. Iran executes a man convicted of spying on the Israeli intelligence agency Mossad. He was accused of transmitting classified information and holding meetings with Mossad officials abroad. The Czech Republic summons China's ambassador over a recent cyber attack targeting its foreign ministry, blaming Beijing-linked hackers and warning of serious consequences. Australia's Conservative Opposition Coalition says it will reunite a week after splitting over policy differences following a stinging election defeat earlier this month. And a German court rejects a landmark case brought against energy giant RWE by a Peruvian farmer who argues the firm should help pay to protect his hometown from melting glacier waters. Today we begin in Cambridge, where Harvard University is locked in an unprecedented standoff with the Trump administration. Once the symbolic heart of American higher education, the university is now at the center of a political firestorm, facing deep cuts to its federal funding, legal threats, and new visa restrictions targeting its international student population. According to an internal State Department cable, the Trump administration has ordered all U.S. embassies and consulates to halt scheduling new appointments for student and exchange visitor visas affecting F, M, and J visa categories. The directive signals a coming expansion in social media vetting for applicants, with officials instructed to shift focus towards services for U.S. citizens and immigrant visas. The policy change aligns with President Trump's broader efforts to tighten immigration and deport foreign nationals over perceived threats to U.S. policy. This shift has now sparked immediate backlash at Harvard, where international students make up about 27% of the student population. Yesterday, students and faculty staged a large protest on campus, accusing the administration of weaponizing immigration policy and free speech suppression.
I would say that we as international students in Harvard, in the U.S., we are not enemies of the U.S. We don't hate the U.S. If we are here, it's because we admire this country, and we admire actually the academic and the liberty and the freedoms that this country has.
The Trump administration has already canceled nearly $3 billion in federal research grants to the university and moved to revoke its authorization to enroll in international students. The U.S. General Services Administration also instructed agencies to review and potentially cancel federal contracts with Harvard, estimated at $100 million. The administration claims the measures are part of a broader crackdown on antisemitism and what it calls radical campus activism. Now, however, critics argue it is a politically driven campaign to undermine elite institutions, especially those perceived as liberal strongholds. In fact, Harvard has filed a lawsuit accusing the administration of violating due process and First Amendment protections.
The administration's excuse for these policies, that they somehow address anti-Semitism, are so absurd. Let's be clear. This has nothing to do with combating anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is a real problem. It's a problem at Harvard. It's a problem in our country. But these policies will do nothing to combat this age-old hatred.
But the backlash has not stopped at policy or legal arguments. In fact, now it's gotten personal. In recent days, social media has exploded with speculation that the crackdown on Harvard is linked to President Trump's youngest son, Barron Trump, allegedly being denied admission to the university. The theory went viral, feeding the public perception of the president's grudge against Ivy League institutions. However, First Lady Melania Trump moved quickly to set the record straight. In a rare public statement issued through her communications director, she called the rumors completely false.
Barron did not apply to Harvard, and any assertion that he or that anyone on his behalf applied is completely false.
So with student visas frozen, research funds slashed, and elite universities under siege, the question lingers, is this a policy war or something far more personal? And staying in the United States, signs of a rift are emerging between President Donald Trump and his close associate, billionaire Elon Musk. The Tesla CEO is breaking ranks with the commander-in-chief by strongly criticizing his tax bill, claiming it undermines the work done by his cost-cutting team, Doge. In a preview of an interview with the media outlet released late on Tuesday, Elon Musk, who heads the Department of Government Efficiency, said he was disappointed to see the massive spending bill and its impact on the federal deficit.
I was disappointed to see the massive spending bill, frankly, which increases the budget deficit, not just decreases it and undermines the work that the Doge team is doing.
Elon Musk's comments appear to place him at odds with the U.S. president, who has heavily promoted the legislation officially called, quote unquote, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. The package extends President Trump's 2017 tax cuts, increases border security spending, adds work requirements to Medicaid, and reduces clean energy tax credits. Now, according to the Congressional Budget Office, the tax provisions alone will add $3.8 trillion to the deficit by 2034. Last week, the U.S. House passed the bill by a single vote, sending it to the Senate for final approval.
Our One Big Beautiful Bill fulfills the mandate for change we were given last November. It allows President Trump to continue his successful border security and deportation operations by investing in more Border Patrol agents and ICE officers, funding the continuation of the border wall, and equipping our men and women on the front lines with the tools they need to keep us safe.
But while cutting some social spending, the bill has attracted strong criticism from deficit hawks. And Elon Musk, who has long claimed that the U.S. would go bankrupt if the deficit was not reduced, appeared to echo that criticism during the interview set to air on June 1st.
I think a bill can be big or it can be beautiful, but I don't know if it can be both. My personal opinion.
Now, this isn't the CEO's first public break from the White House. In fact, it follows his earlier attacks on the administration's trade policy, calling economist Peter Navarro a moron and quote unquote dumber than a sack of bricks. It also comes after Musk reportedly clashed with some cabinet secretaries over cuts made by Doge to many of their agencies. And the efficiency initiative he heads has also come under scrutiny itself. Now, while it claims to have saved $175 billion, media reports found many of those savings from Doge could not actually be verified, pointing to duplicate entries and inflated estimates. The initiative has also been challenged in court over its methods and lack of transparency. And now Elon Musk, who poured nearly $300 million into supporting President Trump and Republican candidates last election cycle, has said he is disappointed with the spending and will be doing a lot less on political campaigns going forward. He's now opting to spend more time at his businesses, especially Tesla, which has suffered a sales slump caused in part by his association with President Donald Trump's administration. But with his very public criticism, the once unbreakable Trump-Musk partnership is now showing clear signs of strain. And with both men wielding immense political and financial clout, their next move could shape the direction not only of U.S. policy, but the Republican Party for years to come. And now moving to the Middle East, the humanitarian crisis in Gaza has reached a critical tipping point as chaos grips aid distribution efforts amid ongoing Israeli offensives and widespread famine fears. On Tuesday, the U.S.-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, or the GHF, confirmed it's now delivering truckloads of food to designated distribution sites. Food convoys began arriving in southern Gaza, where 4 major distribution centers have been established. However, aid deliveries soon spiraled into chaos. Videos show desperate crowds in Rafah climbing fences and tearing down barriers to access food. The sheer volume of people overwhelmed the staff, forcing them to retreat. And eventually, The Israeli military responded by firing warning shots to control the crowds.
We're going to bring food for our children. Feel with us. We want someone to care for us and the tragedy that we are in. We don't care about gunfire or shelling. What matters is for us to bring food to our children.
Now, 3 months of the Israeli blockade pushed Palestinians in Gaza to the brink of famine. And so while few managed to secure aid boxes containing basic items like sugar, flour, and pasta, but the vast majority were left empty-handed. In fact, according to the United Nations, amid the chaos, at least 47 Palestinians were reported injured during the distribution.
We craved sugar. We craved oil. They brought us sugar and oil and brought us flour. This is the flour. Our children were longing for a bite to eat. We ate lentils, we ate pasta, and the merchants made us sell everything to buy expensive things.
And as the situation worsens, the United Nations has expressed deep concern. The UN Secretary General spokesperson called the scenes from Rafah heartbreaking and reiterated that the UN and its partners have a quote-unquote principled, operationally sound plan ready to deliver aid effectively if allowed.
Turning to the situation in Gaza, and I can tell you that we have been watching the video coming out of Gaza around one of the distribution points set up by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, and frankly, these images are heartbreaking to say the least. As the Secretary General noted last week, we and our partners have a detailed, principled, operationally sound plan supported by member states to get aid to desperate population.
The increasingly worsening problem is only compounded by Israel's relentless airstrikes. Gaza's civil defenses confirmed that in the last 2 days, over 50 people have been killed in the territory's north.
The Israeli occupation forces this night have committed a massacre and mass extermination against the sleeping children and women inside this school. The scenes of the children, as I said, are indescribable. The scenes of women are completely indescribable. The bodies have been completely charred inside this school.
Now, since early May, Israel has intensified its military campaign aiming to dismantle Hamas and regain control of Gaza. Over 53,000 people have already been killed since the conflict began in October of 2023, according to Gaza's health authorities, and nearly the entire population of 2.1 million people have been displaced.
We're living the biggest tragedy in Gaza, and no one can feel what we're going through. Even when they bring aid, nothing reaches us. As you can see, we're here as stray dogs collecting food from the trash. I swear this is our life day to day. We collect food every day from garbage. If we don't gather anything, then we don't eat.
Meanwhile, international pressure is also mounting on Israel. In fact, yesterday, the EU chief denounced Israel's abhorrent deadly wave of strikes on civilian facilities in Gaza. Warning Israel of escalation, the EU chief further emphasized, and I quote, that Israel's disproportionate use of force against civilians cannot be justified under humanitarian and international law. But as the U.S. continues to push for a ceasefire, conflicting messages from Hamas and Israeli officials have left diplomacy at a standstill. As the indiscriminate attacks continue, famine looms, aid delivery remains fractured, and the people of Gaza remain trapped in an ever-tightening noose of conflict and deprivation. With tensions rising, aid efforts faltering, and trust eroding, one wonders if Gaza can be saved before it's too late. And now to Bangladesh. At the Chinese embassy, if love is a battlefield, some are losing more than just hearts. The Chinese embassy in Bangladesh has reportedly issued a rather awkward PSA, telling its citizens to stop, think, and definitely not try to, quote, buy a bride overseas. A Apparently, online love scams and shady cross-border matchmaking is so out of hand, they're now a matter of international diplomacy. From fake weddings to real jail time, here's our report on why some Chinese bachelors are learning that imported romance may come with a very, very expensive return policy.
The Chinese embassy in Bangladesh has reportedly issued a new warning that can only be described as a diplomatic love life intervention. They are now urging eligible Chinese male bachelors to stop trying to import themselves a bride. Call it the diplomatic equivalent of a facepalm. The embassy has reportedly warned its citizens to resist the misguided notion of buying a foreign wife through shady matchmaking services. Because apparently, love may be blind, but Bangladesh Border Patrol is not. The advisory, reportedly posted to social media, urged Chinese nationals to steer clear of illegal cross-border dating operations, lest they end up with empty pockets and empty wedding altars. Or worse, they may face criminal charges for human trafficking, which in Bangladesh can land you anywhere from a 7-year staycation in prison to a life sentence or even the death penalty. Not quite the honeymoon most people were hoping for. So what's fueling this international bride-buying frenzy? A perfect storm of democratic disaster. After decades of the infamous one-child policy, China now finds itself with a surplus of bachelors, 35 million men to be exact. These men are mostly from rural areas where marriage pressure is so intense that single men are often labelled leftovers. This male-heavy reality has turned finding a bride into something of an extreme sport. Cue the rise of shady cross-border romance deals. Online advertisements that promise love with a Laotian beauty for nearly $28,000. A small price to pay for love, unless, of course, the bride never arrives and your bank account is not the only thing ghosted. In one standout horror story, a man shelled out nearly $14,000 and flew to Pakistan for a 3-month courtship that ended not in wedding bells, but with the woman turning him into the police. In another, matchmakers were convicted of trafficking by a Chinese court after scamming victims hundreds of thousands. Just to be clear, cross-border marriage agencies are reportedly illegal in China. The law is crystal clear. No matchmaking across borders for profit, no matter how many likes your bio gets. Even Chinese academics can't escape the backlash. Last year, a professor from Xiamen University floated the idea of importing foreign brides to balance the gender scale. The internet responded by metaphorically flipping the mahjong table, accusing him of promoting trafficking and exploitation. As marriage rates in China continue to nosedive, with only 6.1 million reported unions in 2024, down from 7.7 million the year before, it's clear that singlehood is on the rise, and desperate measures are being marketed as solutions. Meanwhile, the embassy's latest reported warning feels like a blend of a cautionary tale and a legal disclaimer. Don't fall for these foreign bride fairy tales, because your happily ever after might just come with a hefty fine or a cellmate. So, to all the hopeful romantics out there thinking of flying to Dhaka to find the one, maybe just stick to dating apps in your own country.
And today we end in Australia, where a 21-year-old took an unusual path to the country's parliament. Instead of door-knocking, television ads, or debates, Charlotte Walker used Minecraft, makeup tutorials, and live streams to talk policy with voters. Now she's one of Australia's youngest senators, and her campaign is drawing global attention. Here's more on how a virtual pickaxe and a palette brush helped launch a Senate career.
Hey guys, while getting ready, I wanted to talk to you about some of the really good stuff.
Playing Minecraft, streaming makeup tutorials, and street interviews.
Which was ridiculous, was try and impose...
Not exactly your typical political campaign. But for Charlotte Walker, Australia's newest senator, it clicked. At just 21 years old, she's made history as one of the youngest ever to be elected to the country's federal parliament. Born in a small South Australian town, Walker wasn't a frontrunner in the election. In fact, she was Australian Labor Party's third pick in a state that rarely secures a Senate seat. But after weeks of vote counting and a surge in support for the Labor Party, Walker clinched one of South Australia's 6 Senate spots. And she did it without traditional ads or door knocking. Instead, she live-streamed herself playing Minecraft, using the game to explain policies while building virtual cities. In one particular clip, she mapped out housing policy inside the game.
Did you know that a re-elected Albanese Labor government...
In another, she spoke of how Labor Party is building a better future.
That's an average of 5,500.
Walker also broke down Labor policies while doing her makeup and ran street-style interviews with fellow candidates.
Well, thanks very much, Sheldon. It's great to have you running for the Labor Party.
I do think the Albanese government has done a good job at presenting policies that appeal to young people, but I think having a young person actually there in caucus meetings and in Parliament is sort of going to bring a different perspective.
In a world of politics that still skews older, Walker's strategy struck a chord, particularly with first-time voters online. At 21, she's not just representing young Australians, she's one of them.
None of the sitting members know what it is to be 21 right now, but I do because I am living through that. So it's, South Australians, but particularly young South Australians first and foremost. It'll be about bringing their voices to the table.
Previously, Walker worked for the Australian Services Union. She had planned to stay in that job, but now she's headed to Canberra, with a base salary of over $200,000 and 6 years ahead in the Parliament.
So, I've been working at the Australian Services Union. I absolutely love my job there, so I intended on staying there for the foreseeable future. Obviously I will have to leave my employment there and some other commitments like sport and that I will have to let go of. It will be a big change, but I feel really well supported and really well resourced for what is to come. Skog, have you heard the news? This is big.
She'll attend a so-called Senate school in July, a crash course for new lawmakers. But Walker's eyes are on the bigger picture. She wants to inspire a new generation, especially young women, to believe they belong in power.
Yeah, it is pretty obvious. But I also want to show young people, particularly young women, that this is achievable and this is something that they can do also. I'm also really excited. Not many people my age get to go to Canberra and have the ability to contribute in the way that I will.
From the Minecraft server to the Senate floor, Charlotte Walker represents a new kind of politician, one that builds blocks in creative mode and builds consensus in caucus. Her campaign proves that authenticity and innovation can redefine political engagement, and that even a pickaxe, a palette brush and a live stream can pave the way to the Parliament.
That's going to do it for us today. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We look forward to seeing you right back here again tomorrow. Thanks everyone for watching.